Welcome to the second series of the stories behind the songs with Dave Kittle. Back in 1979, Dave began a radio career at CHEZ 106 in Ottawa, which spanned 17 years. He was one of the on-air voices that I grew up listening to, and he introduced me to new music that literally changed my life. His knowledge and passion for music are inspiring, to say the least. And in this 12-part podcast, Dave talks about 8 of his favorite songs and the history of how those songs came to be. So pull up a chair and join us for the stories behind the songs.
Al Cooper and Mike Bloomfield would team up off and on together. They made a great live album in the late 1960s called The Live Adventures of Mike Bloomfield and Al Cooper, which they recorded at the Fillmore East with its classic Norman Rockwell album cover. Google it. It's a very, very famous album cover that was painted by Norman Rockwell, the very famous portrait painter. Al Cooper talks in his book about meeting Norman Rockwell and how Rockwell had invited him to one of his art exhibits in New York City. And so he and his wife went, and there's all these, art people there and art critics there. Yeah. He said Norman Rockwell, the first person that came up to talk to Al Cooper and his wife when he came to this art exhibit was Norman Rockwell.
Interesting.
And it's a classic album cover, the Norman Rockwell painting of Al Cooper and Stephen Stills, or Al Cooper and Mike Bloomfield. Anyway, I digress. So anyway, so they kick Al Cooper out of the band. Oh, another thing about Al Cooper, he later discovered Lynyrd Skynyrd and produced their first 2 albums, I believe, including Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird.
Really?
Yeah, he became a producer and discovered Lynyrd Skynyrd and produced the early albums of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Al Cooper's still alive.
Is he?
Not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Should be, just because of the fact that he's been involved with all of these great bands and these great things.
And so many different facets of the industry
as I say, he just happens to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. And took advantage and was able to step it up.
Yeah, exactly. Still alive. Still lives in New York. Still plays. Still around. Yeah. Very, 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 very interesting guy, Al Cooper. Anyway, so getting back to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So they fire Al Cooper, kick him out of the band, hire David Clayton Thomas, and go back into the studio with a new producer, James William Garusio, who used to produce a band called the Buckinghams. Are you familiar with the Buckinghams? Band out of Chicago.
Possibly. It sounds familiar.
Oh, they had several hits. Don't You Care, Susan. But they were a really, really great sort of soul rock band that used a lot of horns. And he produced them and also produced he produced the Chicago Transit Authority, but also produced the second and I believe the third Blood, Sweat, and Tears album. Huge album, as you know. Big album. Yeah. Spinning Wheel, You Made Me So Very Happy, Smiling Phases, and God Bless the Child, and the song And When I Die, which was written by Laura Nyro. Now, Laura Nyro was a New York City-based singer-songwriter who had a cult following at best and made several albums that were very well received by the critics, but were not very, very commercially successful. Laura Nyro is best known for the songs she wrote.
Okay.
Not only in When I Die for Blood, Sweat, and Tears, she also wrote Eli's Coming for Three Dog Night. She wrote Stony End for Barbra Streisand. And she wrote several songs for the Fifth Dimension, including Wedding Bell Blues, Stone Soul Picnic, Save the Country. Very, very popular singer-songwriter Laura Nyro. Unfortunately, she died young in 1997 at the age of 49. She had ovarian cancer and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame posthumously in 2012.
Wow.
Anyway, Blood, Sweat, and Tears did And When I Die, and the album was a massive success.
Yeah.
Won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. Blood, Sweat, and Tears played Woodstock. Did you know that?
I did not
A lot
know that.
A lot of people don't remember
that
that Blood, Sweat, and Tears. They were the biggest band in the world in 1969. They played Woodstock. Yeah. But a lot of people don't know that because they weren't in the movie.
Okay.
They never made it in the movie because their manager would not allow them to be filmed by the movie crew when they played at Woodstock. Creedence Clearwater Revival played at Woodstock. A lot of people don't know that. The band played at Woodstock.
Yeah. So you know CCR?
Pardon me?
Inside joke, folks.
I see the bad. Johnny Winter played Woodstock.
Okay.
Yeah, wow. A lot of these, but they weren't in the movie, so a lot of people don't forget that they were actually on the bill at Woodstock.
Boy, and today, if we could bring today's technology back then, and if everybody at Woodstock had their cell phones recording, there isn't a manager in the world that would say, "Don't film us." They'd want to be filmed.
Oh, for sure.
Like, yes,
because the Woodstock movie made the career of Santana, who were unknown at the time. The only reason they got on the bill at Woodstock, they didn't even have a record deal before they played at Woodstock. The only reason they got on the bill was because they were managed by Bill Graham, the owner of the Fillmores, and he was hired as a music consultant before the term consultant existed. They hired him on to, suggest some of the acts that they should probably book for the original Woodstock Festival. And the only way that he would agree to do that was if they booked Santana, a band he managed and were only known in the Bay Area.
Wow.
And I think they were paid $300 or $500 to play Woodstock.
Back in the 60s.
69. And played, I believe, on the Saturday afternoon of the festival, and nobody knew who they were, and they blew the place apart.
Yeah.
And they released their debut album several months after that, and their career was made because of their appearance in the movie. Sly and the Family Stone was another band that they were a pretty popular band, but their appearance in the movie made them superstars. 10 Years After was another band that was a sort of a fringe British blues rock band that had not had an awful lot of commercial success, and their appearance at the Woodstock movie, they shot them to star status. So the movie, the movie made the careers of all kinds of different people. But you're absolutely right. Like anybody nowadays would welcome the opportunity for to appear in a feature movie.
Oh God, at concerts today, the artists themselves will say, post record some of the show and post it on social media.
Exactly.
I mean, it's all exposure. It's all about exposure.
That's
today.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But CCR didn't appear in the movie because John Fogerty didn't like the band's performance. They were filmed.
Okay.
But he thought that they put on a terrible show and refused to let them appear in the movie.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, but interesting. When I Die was a big hit. One of several on that album. Number 2 in the Billboard charts. It was the 3rd single off the album.
Yeah.
Spinning Wheel, of course, was the big hit. From that album. And Blood, Sweat, and Tears continued for many, many years. Yeah. There was always different personnel.
Oh yeah.
They always changed. They changed. The only guy that stayed with the band right till the end was the drummer. Bobby Colomby, who ended up being a big record executive. But David Clayton Thomas stayed on with Blood, Sweat, and Tears they had several more. He had Lucretia McEvil, Heidi Ho.
Which I was going to say, as far as I'm concerned, that is the best song that they've ever done. Yeah. When those horns kick in at the beginning of the song, it just puts you in this thing. Like when I first heard that so many years ago, it like shocked me awake. And when then the drums just a simple roll, 3 hits, and then this whole band comes, storming in, and his vocals on that song. I think Lucretia McEvil is my all-time favorite, one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yeah, it is a great song.
Did you get to see David Clayton Thomas and a whatever version of Blood, Sweat, and Tears a few years ago at Blues Fest?
I did not, no.
Okay, I went to that show. Mm-hmm. And it was so amazing. At the time, they played on a stage that was, I think it was called the River Stage.
Right.
And
one of the side stages.
One of the
small
stages.
Side stages.
Yeah, which was unfortunate, but that's fine. And at the time he was playing, they were doing all these things. And I mean, of course, I was grooving to everything. I love all their stuff.
And at one point in time, when they stopped playing, they finished a song, and you could just hear the bleed from the main stage coming in, and he just kind of said, well, he said, I thought we were loud, but okay, well, maybe we could just turn it up a bit or whatever. And then they just kicked it, and it was so good.
Yeah, they had a lot of hits. Go Down Gamblin' was another one.
Go Down Gamblin'. And the horns and everything. That was, what a band.
I've always loved horns. I'm a big fan of Chicago. I love the band Chicago. I loved the Buckinghams because they used horns. The Ides of March. Remember the song Vehicle by the Ides of March?
I don't know if I do.
I'm the friendly stranger in the black sedan, and won't you hop inside my car? I got pictures of candy. I'm a lovable man. Won't you take it?
Okay,
I'm your vehicle, baby. But that's another great horn song.
Yeah.
But I've always liked bands with horns in them. I'm
Yeah.
always fascinated. But Blood, Sweat, and Tears were definitely one of the best. And that was a great album, that second Blood, Sweat, and Tears album. Just fabulous.
Yeah.
But their first album, Childless Father of the Man, is a very, very good album. But totally different.
Right.
Totally different from the stuff with Blood,
Quite
Sweat, and
mellow,
Tears.
actually.
A little bit mellower, a little bit mellower and a little bit more experimental, but a great album nonetheless. But Al Cooper, getting back to Al Cooper, one of the most interesting characters in the history of rock and roll. And if you ever have a chance to read his book, it's available on Amazon.
Okay.
Called Backstage Passes. It's a fascinating book, and he's a great storyteller.
Oh yeah, that sounds like
he's got all kinds of great stories in there.
Yeah.
It's really, really a great album, a great book, but a great song by a great band.
Yeah.
You've been listening to The Stories Behind the Songs with Dave Kittle. Join us again for the next part in this series. Brought to you by Sunholes Music. Download the latest album now at sunholes.com.